What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, guys. We are here back in Sweden. What an interesting one. We back with my guy, Steven Thyron. I think I said that last name right. But Steven, here with how Scandinavians approach parenting and sex education. Now, I remember I got a lot of huff and puff in the beginning about, my kids get whoopings and stuff. But this is the thing, y'all don't realize. My kids don't get whoopings every day or just frequently. I got some good kids. They get a good talking to most of the time. I don't resort. Whooping is not a first option. It's not. Does have they done stuff to get a whooping? Yes. But it wasn't. It's. I think you have to understand and be a part to understand how if you're from, as we were talking, Sweden and other countries, that's not, y'all don't do that at all. You wouldn't understand here. Now, do some people take it a little further? Yes, because I feel like you shouldn't get whooped for everything. That's why I'm a talker anyway. I'm a talker more. But we finna see how Scandinavians approach sex education as well, because I believe that's something for the parents to teach. For sure, letting their kids know how that is. Also, because I feel like we learned a little at school, but I don't feel like it was. They showed like this DVD, he understood, boom, bam, that was it. But I feel like it's so much more, because I think sometimes it entitles hygiene and different things like that, I believe we see. But other than that, I think definitely this is some parents. For me, I feel like as a parent, I should be teaching my kids both of these things, actually, how to approach parenting and sex, just because like they need to understand how it is to be a parent as well, in their young days, because one of these days they're going to be. But Steven, we finna check this out. I think he did a podcast with somebody, because I think somebody's featured on here, but we finna see, hit that subscribe button. Let's jump into this.
Hey everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm joined once again with Marina from Dating Beyond Borders. Welcome.
Oh,
Hey
Data
guys.
Beyond Borders.
And
That's
in
her
this
channel.
video, we want to go into specifically what are some differences of like raising kids, or how Swedish people parent their kids versus other countries, and what are some like unique aspects about that. This is a follow-up to our last video we did about dating. So if you manage to be with a Swede long enough to have kids maybe before you get married, well, what can you expect? What are some differences, Marina? Tell us.
Well, I think one of the main things about Scandinavian culture in general is the idea of don't be better than anybody else, right? Whereas like, I would say that's changing nowadays, but parts of it are still ingrained. So for example, if a kid is doing really well, you're not going to be like, you're the best, go. Like the kid is going to be asked to tutor another kid, right? Like, so they can bring him up, and it's like teamwork, and it's working together. So if you look at Sweden, like there's no gift schools. That doesn't exist there. Like, oh, your kid is better, they should go to a special school. Like, no, ever.
And we actually used to have this thing. I don't know why we have it. Me personally, because I feel like some kids are more advanced at an early age than other kids, but later on in life, those kids that were like, that probably progress things slower, they become better. Hence myself, I wasn't the best when it came to reading and all these different things and writing, but now I'm an excellent reader. I've written 3 books, but we had this thing called gifted and talented, or talented and gifted, because they called it tag. And you pretty much pull out these kids and, you just know it as tag, but the credentials were talented and gifted. Isn't all kids talented? But we do separate them. Here in the States, we do separate, because most kids go to private schools, and there are certain schools that you have to have like certain grades to maintain to be able to go there and stuff. So I can say for sure we have that here. They separate.
It's the same. But I think also it's the idea of you trust your kid as an individual. You're not like a helicopter parent where you're just like running around like, oh no, little Jackie, don't fall in. Be careful, hold my hands. I think for a lot of like Scandinavian parents, like the parenting comes down to, okay, let the kid run around, let them fall down, let them, get themselves dirty. They're gonna learn from that. They're going to become an individual. Like they're going to be self-sufficient, because that's the huge thing, is becoming a self-sufficient individual, right? So since childhood, I would say that's how the kids are raised. In Denmark, I heard of like in schools you can even use like real life tools, or you'll cook with like a knife, and even like Danish parents, they will bring their kids to see if like an animal is killed, because they'll be like,
Oh,
you know
wow.
what, you're eating the meat, so you're going to watch how this animal is killed, so you know exactly what you're eating. It's pretty dark, but it's kind of
I couldn't imagine that, because I seen how they, I ain't gonna lie, I seen how they butcher and stuff. I'm not the type with a weak stomach, but I'm like, I wouldn't want to see it. Have I seen some clips and videos? I have, but they haven't changed my mind about eating meat or nothing. But it's horrid, and we don't. I don't even think we have nothing like that. I guess it would depend on if you're in like agriculture type of stuff. They might do
like
that.
the idea of like talking to the kid like they're an adult, and if the kid does something wrong, you're not going to be like, go to the corner, go to the, go sit there and wait, and your playtime is canceled. It'll be like, no, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's how I am with mine. I have to tell them like, why would you make that decision? Because if you don't understand if they don't understand why they made that decision, how that decision can affect them, any decision that you make can affect you. That's why I say, especially when kids get older, like that's one thing I can say. Most kids don't get whoopings when they reach a certain age and stuff like that here in the States, or at least from my experience, most kids don't. They get a good talking to and try to understand. At least I know I talk to mine.
It's so interesting. I was listening to a podcast by Kay Mellish, I think her name is, this American living in Denmark, and she was saying how her kid did something wrong and she took away playtime, and the Danish parents were appalled. They were like, why would you do that? You shouldn't punish your kid. You should talk to your kid and you should explain. And she was like, get off my case.
Yeah.
This is how I do my parenting, right? Yeah. But the idea of punishment is really outdated.
So interesting. And I guess...
But what is punishment? I feel like me personally, I feel like if you take something away, I don't think that's punishment. That's letting them know in life you can lose things. Because my kids, instead of getting a whooping, like I said, I don't have to whoop them for everything. But there's times where it's like, okay, you finna lose this for a couple of days. Like we say grounded and stuff, but I feel like grounded, you don't want them to, they shouldn't be grounded for no more than a week. Let alone if they lose something, let me hold this for you for a couple of days, something like that. And I feel like that just let them know. 'Cause I feel like, especially here in the States, it's totally different, and people don't realize by a decision you make, you can lose it all. You can lose everything. Like y'all seen videos, I'm sure, prison system and stuff, or somebody made a mistake, or it's people in prison for crimes they didn't commit. So that's how quickly you can lose. I feel like that's a lesson when you take away certain things, letting them know like this is how fast you can lose something by a decision. That's a life lesson.
Every kid is different as well. Like my parents were always talking about when my brother and I were growing up, I was always the logical kid. If they said I couldn't do something, they would be like, you would always ask why. And you would have to explain like the why behind like why you couldn't do this thing. Whereas with your brother, we wouldn't explain why. We would just punish him and say, you can't do this if you do this. And the punishment was enough for him to understand, okay, I don't do that. But I was always, so maybe I have this like Swedish mentality deep down of like, wanting to understand the why behind things.
Yeah, I think it's cool like when parents tell the kids why, because then you're not just like, because I told you so. Okay, that's not a good reason for why I shouldn't do that.
They definitely want to know why, though.
That's an interesting part. And I think the other thing that, of course, you know of, and this is probably more Danes than Swedes, it's the cold exposure. It's the idea of being outside. And I think that's why Scandinavians are so crazy about airing out the rooms and going out for walks when it's like, who is going to want to go out in this terrible weather, right? Like, you don't want to go out, but this idea of being outside is so ingrained in their life. And it comes with the cold exposure, like leaving the pram outside and just leaving it there and going in for coffee and letting the kid just lay outside. So I think I think it's quite like a balanced way of raising kids.
Yeah, I've recently gotten to spend some time around Swedish kids, being with my girlfriend and her sister who has a 4-year-old daughter and a newborn. And so it's been very, very interesting for me to see their parenting style and like really, as you were saying, like allowing the kid to like figure things out on their own and like not being a helicopter parent, as we would say in the US, of like always standing over their shoulder and doing everything for them, but really giving them this sense of independence in a way where if they're trying to do something and they ask mom and dad to do it, well, they say, well, you can do it, and having them.
See, that's how I am with my boys, because I teach them early, because at some point, you're going to have to do this stuff by yourself. So even if my kids come and ask me, they get a simple yes or no. They don't get, can you do it for me? They don't have to ask me that. Can you do this for me? They already know. If they asking for something, if I say yes, they already know how to go do it and get the job done because they've been taught. That's what I believe. I believe in their independence.
Like develop this sort of independent mentality that they can do it on their own. So it's very, very interesting to see like the different parenting styles from culture to culture as well.
And have you noticed the difference in Swedish kids? Have you seen like that, they act differently?
In my experiences from teaching in the US and Sweden, like the grading system and how people are brought up basically through the school system. Americans are like tested like multiple choice questions, true, false, like a lot of these types of tests. Whereas in Sweden, it was a lot more open-ended and a lot more like essays and a lot more describing their experience. And whereas America, sort of, we put it in a box of like, this is the right answer, this is the wrong answer. Whereas
you got a 50-50 chance.
Spectrum in a way in the Swedish system, if that makes sense, which was
more nuanced.
Sort of confusing as a teacher that had never gone through the Swedish school system myself, and then found myself teaching in this system. In America, you take a test, you get 9 out of 10 right, that's an A. You get 8 out of 10 right, that's a B. It's very cut and dry. And here it's like you have a range of different ways that you can view and grade. And especially in PE, the kids that were really athletic and everything, they might have an A in every category, but then they couldn't dance. So they couldn't get an A because they weren't up to the A level in dancing, for example. So the people that got A's most often in PE were girls that were athletic and could do all the physical things, but could also do the dancing. They could do the orienteering and basically going around and locating locations on the map and swimming and all of these things that were a part of the list. So it was a more well-rounded way of looking at the PE subject, I would say.
That's very interesting. And I find, when we were talking about sex in the other video, it's interesting the way that kids are introduced to sex. Like, it's in Denmark, especially, like I've heard that, all over Scandinavia, I would say, in the US, it's still kind of taboo. If you're a little kid, you'd be like, oh, this is your pee-wee and this is your whatever. You have little cute names for parts. And I remember reading an article of a woman saying like, well, why can't we name things the way they are? Like, what is different about these parts of our body that, we can't tell the kid, okay, this is what happens. This is how people have sex. And, I don't know if you've noticed this in Sweden, like the books that are sold to kids, teaching them about sex education. It's not the birds and the bees, right?
Yeah,
it's very explicit.
Very interesting.
That is interesting. Me personally, I feel like that's something too, because, I don't know how it is in Sweden, but down here, it's just different. That's all I can say. It's different. I can't even go into details, but it's different. I think teachers and parents should be teaching their kids. Like I said, most times, we watching movies anyway. We see movies and we know what they about to do, or usually when you're a little kid, we're told. I remember when I was younger, when there's sex scenes and stuff, cover your eyes and all those different things. We know not to watch certain things with kids. Because you watch and see anything, you're gonna get some ideas. So already telling them and stuff, it's not a bad thing for telling them, because at some point they're gonna have to know. But it's like, just make sure taking care of yourself, doing the right way, you know, because even with sex education, I think hygiene and all that stuff is a part of that.
I remember going into the Stockholm library basically, and we were just going around with my mom because it's a beautiful building, and we were looking at all the artwork and the books everywhere, and then we ended up in the kids section somehow, and there was just a book sitting there out in the open, and it was like the complete sex book for kids basically, and then we picked it up and was reading it and was like, wow, this is very, very detailed, but it was also great. I came from a background of like living in Germany for a little while when I was very young, so I was exposed to European openness around sex that was maybe not traditional for people that were growing up all their lives in America. So I had this sort of deeper founded appreciation for the Swedish approach to how they teach sex to the younger kids as a natural thing and nothing to be ashamed of.
Right.
So it's quite interesting how they viewed it. But then obviously
when
I was thrown onto the other side of the equation as a teacher teaching sex ed in Sweden, I found it very awkward when we give all the kids clay and, you know, they're molding penises out of clay. Like, it was so...
Okay, that was different. I don't know about
so surreal to me because in America, that's like the first thing they'd tell you not to do as a teacher. Don't let the kids drop penises on anything or do anything like this. And here we're encouraging it. In Sweden, it was such a surreal... And then we're
two different worlds.
Hanging up the artwork they had made on the walls. You know, every day I'm walking down the hallway of penises, basically on.
Yeah, that's not getting away with that here in the States. That's crazy. That's funny. That's funny though.
This would never happen in the U.S. It was
but
so
I also
surreal.
wonder though, like,
not.
how did the kids react to that? Because I can imagine American kids being like, "Yeah, I'm gonna make a big dick," you know, like that's how they would approach that assignment. Like, I wonder if Swedish kids made the same jokes.
I think the level of maturity was probably a little higher in Sweden than I would have expected.
I think that's the difference, you know, because some mature kids will understand, you know, but growing up, we did a lot of immature stuff, you know, so I feel like that's why we couldn't get away with this. Because I don't know, I was number one in, hey, did you talk to D? D who? D's nuts. That was my thing growing up, and I got in trouble a lot for that one, you know, just because it's funny. It's a funny joke, you know, but...
in the U.S., but there were the still kids,
That's
you know,
crazy.
A female teacher comes into the room to get some supplies and, hey, check out my, you know, saying things like this. And so, of course, there's still a little bit about that, but there's something about the ability to just like laugh about it that sort of puts it into this just natural human experience. You know, this is a normal thing. We can all laugh about it. But it's not a big taboo thing, basically.
Yeah, you definitely couldn't do that in the States.
I remember actually my sex ed experience when I must have been 10, 11 years old, and we were, you know, the teacher puts the video on the screen, and they had separated all the boys and girls, actually. So the girls, they go to another room and they watch the girl video, and the guys, they stay in the room and they watch the video specifically for the guys, and it talks about your body's going to be going through changes and this and that. And I remember one of my friends was goofing off, so they sent him to the other room with the girls, and he had to watch the girls' video. And when they were sending him out, they had paused the screen right on a big picture of a penis, you know, and we're all like 11, 12 years old. And I start laughing, and the teacher goes, "What do you think is so funny?" And I was like, "Well, you tell us all the time not to talk about the stuff, do anything, and now you just pause the screen. There's a big penis up there." So it was, but it was so interesting that like the American teachers had this like sensitivity around it. It's like, put the video up, don't ask any questions, let's just get through this. And in Sweden, it was so open. Like the first thing we did is bring all the kids in, and any question you have about sex, write it on the board, and the teacher's gonna leave the room. And
I feel like, because I seen that video too when I was like 10, 11, 12 or something. They showed it. I was in 6th grade for sure when we showed it. But I feel like as you get older, I feel like when it comes to sex education, you definitely need a mature mind. I think, you know, show the beginning stuff, you know, I guess, you know, body parts and stuff when you're young, but as you get older, I think that's when it's going to make more sense to talk, because, you know, believe it or not, you know, once you 15, 16, 17, especially here in the state, kids are going to be sexually active, you know? So I feel like as they reach these ages close to adulthood, They need to talk about it and know, like, hey, they need to know the do's and don'ts. It need to be a discussion. But when you're younger, definitely, I'm sure learn the body parts, learn how it is. But as they get older, it does need to be talked about more at a mature level, so kids will know. Especially because I don't know how it is in Sweden, but like HIV and AIDS and all this stuff, it's pretty high here in the States. So that's why we need to talk about, safe sex, all this stuff. But I don't know those numbers in Sweden.
We'll come back and answer everything. And we're explaining to 12-year-olds what 69 and reverse cowgirl and all these things are.
Oh God! And I'm like, I as a former teacher, I'm in pain listening to it.
Dang!
It's miserable. It's a horrible experience.
It was. Yeah, I mean, luckily I was team teaching with one other teacher, but it was both of us were a little bit outside of our
okay. That's a little.
I think it's kind of cool. I mean, I like the idea that like kids have those questions anyways, and nowadays it's just a click away from seeing everything.
Exactly.
So are you gonna learn about sex from porn, or you're gonna learn it from like an actual source? So I think that makes a difference for how they approach sex. Although I would have to say on the negative side of that, Scandinavia has some really high like rates of chlamydia. So whatever the kids are not doing right, I'm not sure, but yeah, protection is an issue.
It's interesting, and people do get tested a lot in Stockholm. And I remember my first time going in to get tested, and there's this huge stigma around STDs in the US. And I remember saying to the nurse, I really, really hope I don't have anything. And she was basically like, yeah, if you have anything, it's no big deal. You come back, you take some pills, and you'll be fine in a week. And it was like their mindset around it. Like it was this huge negative thing in the US, and in Scandinavia, they're like, oh, it's just a part of life. If you get it, take some pills and you'll be better. And that was so like a weird reframe around this thing that I had heard as like the worst thing ever. And then to them, no big deal. It's sort of interesting that's probably why the rates are much higher here, because the stigma around it isn't as high as other places.
Definitely should be covering it up though.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, the stigma around sex is definitely way less, and you can talk about it openly, and it's just something. Every time I would hang out with Scandinavians, like they have no issues with talking about their sex life. Like it's just kind of, especially like, I mean, I would say probably Danes I've had that experience with the most, but it's just a part of life, right? Like they don't think of it as something like to be swept under the carpet and locked up. So I think it starts with that, like learning about it in childhood, right? It's where like your parents deal with it as well.
Yeah.
Like they're there if you have questions. They're not like, okay, no, ask your dad, or so that's interesting.
Yeah. So if you guys want to hear us go more into depth about dating and sex specifically, be sure to check out our other video right here. But I do want to say, Marina, thanks for joining us.
This was good.
This was a lot of fun. I feel like we could talk about this stuff for hours.
Me too. Thanks for having me, Stefan. This was so much fun to talk about. It's so interesting.
Yeah. And don't forget to check out her book down below in the description, Sex Before Coffee. And we'll see you guys in another video.
Not before coffee. That's an interesting title. No, yeah, it's it's a way of life. It's a way to create life. So, but definitely got to be mature with it, because that's why I said there's two different worlds. That's just how it is, different. Because in the States, if somebody was to come from Sweden and just test the waters of life in America, how is life really in America versus what I just see on TV, on the news and stuff like that, when something major happened, I think y'all would be shocked. I honestly do. I've seen a lot of culture shocks from Americans being abroad. I don't think I've seen that many videos from, Europeans or anybody else coming to America with their culture shock. So I think that's the difference maker right there. Because most of the time what you see on TV, definitely not it. But kind of what Steven was saying. We've seen the video. We did those things and stuff. But I definitely think it should be talked about more, because, you talk about HIV and AIDS and stuff. It's high here in the States. So, and I don't think no pills are going to just do the job for those. Me personally, I don't think there's like a cure for it. Even though Magic Johnson been living for all this time, I think he got the cure because he got some money. But that's about it. But y'all let me know what y'all think. I gave my approaches as I was watching, the video, as we were going through the video and stuff. But, I think parents play a big key in just teaching their children. Me personally, I know my kids, they get stuff from their teachers and stuff, but I know it's up to me to teach them, at a different level. I got to teach them even more, just because I've been through it. They should know the mistakes I made, especially as they get older and mature their minds. So a mature mind, that's, you can talk to kids about anything if their mind is already maturing to that place to be able to talk. That's how I feel. But that's all I have. Hit that subscribe button. Y'all be blessed, be the best, and be you. I'm out.